So this is part of our startup series at BetaTech. So can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. I'm Arif, and I'm the founder and CEO of Alitheas AI, which is a synthetic media startup that is focused on enabling and creating opportunities for people to interact and create their own synthetic media.
So our audience and myself included are interested to know, how did it all start? I mean, I was looking at your profile and you were at LinkedIn for some years. What happened and what inspired you to create a startup?
Yeah, actually, LinkedIn was a critical and pivotal part of my journey. It fundamentally transformed the way that I looked at scale, distribution, monetization. It gave me the right mental models um, to really think about how I want to live my life and the type of company that I want to be in. And LinkedIn served as an inspiring example because of the culture and values it instilled in its early employees. And I was one of the early employees in the Singapore office.
Okay.
When it had, I think it started its Singapore office in about 2013. And around 2014, I joined, and I remember the tremendous opportunity and palpable sense of excitement that existed. And I think still continues to exist today in the company as to the opportunity to serve the world's professionals and people who want to continuously upgrade and skill themselves. So I think the start of it was just, being an enterprise salesperson and learning about the sales cycle and understanding customer pain points. So that was the beginning of sort of my journey as to really listening into what customers need and how a product can actually service that need at scale. And in LinkedIn's case, it was really introducing a disruptive, rather say transformative technology, which would allow companies to more efficiently in-house their hiring, but also save costs and at the same time provide ownership on their employer brand. So this was something fairly new in Southeast Asia, the market I was covering, and it provided me the right sort of longitudinal exposure to the way the industry was, in several industries were being impacted by this transformative technology. So, yeah, I think that was the first start. And, I had a couple of colleagues who had started their own companies or who had left LinkedIn to start. And it isn't like Silicon Valley per se, because you're in Singapore and not everyone is starting their own companies. Most people are trading up for other corporate jobs, or that's the traditional hierarchy. But I've always had the itch to start my own thing. And I think when I had these one or two experiences at LinkedIn that shaped me and made me feel that this is something that I too can do, I wanted to take that leap as well. So that was the early sort of seed. And then later on, of course, I had a few more opportunities and jobs that came up.
I was just going to ask you about those. So you said that LinkedIn really proved pivotal to be where you are today. And as CMO, what did you learn that helped you on your journey to becoming a CEO?
Oh, yeah. So I was at, after LinkedIn, I moved to the US, and it was an extremely difficult move to make because the environment in the US, this was just after the 2016 elections, and the immigration environment was pretty intense. And thankfully, I had some family support. But as I was there in San Francisco, I took some time off because legally I really could not work. There's a period of time where you have to wait and you're not allowed to work. And so I took that opportunity to just immerse myself in the world of, back then, the emerging world of blockchain and cryptocurrencies and artificial intelligence. I think blockchain more in San Francisco, at least, was starting to pick up. And this was the beginning of really a financial revolution in the way the technology was going to enable people to have control of their money, people to have an understanding of how money is printed, people to equip even people to have the ability to completely own this asset in what they call a permissionless way, right? So that means no permissions are needed to print or manage or move assets around, and no middleman is needed. And so that was the transformation I witnessed in as I started to immerse myself in the uh, emerging blockchain space circa mid 2017. And this was a great platform. And when I had the opportunity to meet with the founder and CEO of SingularityNet at one of these events, Ben's really a genius in terms of his thinking, philosophy, and vision, and he has, written an endless amount of books and also created opportunities and ways of viewing the world that I consider to be revolutionary. Right. So when I met him, I really felt like this vision at SingularityNet was something that I could really get behind, and I felt that this was something that would equip me to really understand the world, but also to bring some of my Web 2 learnings to a Web 3 world, because SingularityNet was combining the impact of both blockchain and artificial intelligence technologies. It was still early days to combine these two really exponential functions together. But the team that was being assembled and the opportunity to learn from some of the best minds in the world, I felt that was something that I could not pass up. So the experience at LinkedIn was certainly helpful because it gave me very strong go-to-market instincts and a clear map to navigate in terms of hiring people, building the right culture, building the right team, and also the opportunity to just learn how to manage remotely, in terms of ensuring that the teams that we were building were largely global and distributed. And this was before remote work was even popular, right? So I'd say that LinkedIn provided the ability to shape and build a go-to-market strategy for SingularityNet, which is what I did as CMO. And I think the opportunities to learn and grow were certainly there in terms of building a culture and ecosystem for others to join the company and the community, because this was a different play when we moved from the Web 2 world, which is fairly centralized and controlled, to a Web3 world, where decentralized communities, the opportunity to interact with them, to learn from them. This was a shift in mindset. So while some of my Web2 thinking was still relevant, I had to also at the same time think about the new mental models I would need to navigate in this evolving landscape.
Right. And you mentioned that you always had the itch to start your own thing. So talk us through that. Is it like the stereotype, like around CEOs and founders, that people who end up starting their own companies just already know, right, from day one that they're meant to do this? Do you think that's true? Or maybe somewhere down the road you can just like start your own thing as well?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of an accidental entrepreneurship aspect to many great entrepreneurs, and there's also the opportunity to learn and reimagine oneself and one's self image, right? So I think the main thing for me, at least, was just endless external curiosity about the world, but also an unending curiosity internally. Like I really wanted to understand how far I could really push myself, but also create something meaningful that would outlast me, right? So the opportunity to really create something that is birthed from an idea, a seed, to then take that and shape that around, and then really build that out from scratch is a type of madness, I think, that CEOs do encounter. And I say madness in a polite way, because you have to have a sense of irrationality to you to
Mhm.
want to try and build a vision. And
Yeah.
oftentimes, and I actually learned this from seeing the endless level of persistence that I was watching a documentary recently about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's political rise when she defeated
Yeah.
a political opponent in Brooklyn. Sorry, was it the Bronx? Yeah. So I think it is sort of the traditional archetypical story is always a David versus Goliath narrative, but you can see her own struggles and her own sort of self-questioning in that, as to why would someone go and build something. So I think some of it is innate. For me, at least, certainly aspects of it were innate. Some of it was just rediscovering opportunities to learn myself, and also the opportunity to create something new. So this was these were the primary motivating factors. And at the end of the day, the why must always be, I think, fundamentally driven by internal reasons that are consistent with a person's identity. And that way they don't give up, right? Because the amount of struggles an entrepreneur or anybody who's starting something new faces is really exorbitantly high. The amount of complexity you move, if you move your career from a salesperson to a marketing person, you're making several jumps already. But when you move yourself from sales marketing and then also to new fields, and then after that to new scope and functions, you're always evolving and keeping your consciousness supple and soft to the world, so that you can absorb these ideas and at the same time impact them in a positive way.
Yeah, and speaking of these innate aspects, I guess it's more important as a leader to be ready for the long haul, right? So, how important, in your opinion, is it to be banking on a 10-year journey and for you and your team to be on the same page?
Yeah, I think the ability to communicate across an organization is critical to being on the same page. And communication is two parts, really, as I have tried to understand it. There is the act of speaking itself, and there is the act of listening. And I
Absolutely.
think on the listening side is where, I think early indications when I was at LinkedIn, uh, it was something that was certainly emphasized, but I never really understood the depth of listening. What exactly is listening at a very deep level? So there's an individual can listen to you, so they can hear you, but whether they internalize the message and begin embodying it, that really starts to show your effectiveness as a communicator. It's the internalizing and then subsequent embodiment in action that shows a high level of listening. That means there's a high level of osmosis. The culture is being shared, and actual behavior is being impacted. At LinkedIn, certainly the opportunity to hear inspiring CEOs like Jeff Weiner, and they had often emphasized this in almost subtle, slightly mystical ways, right? Like the value of listening, and why CEOs need to be good listeners. And at the same time, it's there is that individual listening, but then there's also a group level listening that occurs. And I think the group level listening is when you can start creating really um, valuable businesses, when a group is actually in coherence and is able to create and generate states of flow that are in line with the shared listening and the shared culture being created by either the CEO or the leaders, or allowing other CEOs or leaders to emerge that actually create that sort of shared listening. So that sort of unified listening field of sorts is probably the primary, in my estimate, the one of the key areas of growth and development I've had, as I've seen organizations grow in scale from smaller ones to much larger ones, right? So being on the same page really is not just about the CEO or the leader talking or communicating all the time and sending memos. It's also about the level of shared listening that exists in the group. And that's the difference, right? So if you were to evaluate a group, and not to sound too scientific or uh, um, uh, numbers oriented here, but if you were to give yourself an intelligence quotient, now give yourself a listening quotient, right? Like give the group a sense of how receptive are they, how cynical are they, how much do they believe it, uh, how attuned are they to the message that is being shared, and then after that judge their actions by it, right? So that's for me the key thing about communication. The moment that is understood and embodied across an organization, you can actually build something longer and sustainable. Now, about the 10-year question, I think as long as the existing frameworks are there, existing opportunities to listen and to create the shared space of listening is there, and the ability to confront sometimes when these spaces of listening or these trusted spaces are sort of not acted on or broken, then you can continue to build on that and actually start to have longer term visions. But it really is about creating that shared culture of listening at the beginning of the organization.
Right, makes sense. So, Arif, if you were to classify your leadership style, what would you say your leadership style is like? And I'm also interested to know whether it has been hard for you to find the right people, that like those people who share your vision.
Yeah, I think I'll address the second one first. I think talent is always difficult to source for and search for. But with now the remote world and the remote working opportunities that are coming up, I think I see this as a great opportunity to equalize access to talent, right? So there's a phrase in Silicon Valley I've heard often repeated, opportunity, talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. That means opportunity is usually just in certain pockets, right? And it's sort of squared off and inaccessible, and you have to go through gatekeepers to get the right opportunity. You have to have the right family networks, blah 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 blah. So I think that sort of world will of course still exist in certain elite circles. I don't see decision making in some of, let's say, the large Fortune 500 companies ever being democratized to the people, right? Like these are small elite boardrooms where decisions are made and decisions are then sort of funneled down. The real opportunity is going to come from the number of startups that are springing up in the world today, trying to deal with a remote first world and trying to build new opportunities to collaborate, connect, and really build new solutions as we try and adjust to a new normal. Right? So I think opportunity is going to be accessible. It's just about articulating a clear vision so that people can join, people can understand the vision, and people can confront themselves. So I think in terms of the culture, I always try and ask myself, everyone that I bring on board or everyone that I've interviewed, the most important thing in the beginning phases of a company is to bring people on board who are going to help you transform the company in a positive direction. And the
Yep.
only way they can do that is if they have some degree of self-transformation themselves. That means they have impacted themselves in a positive way where they don't necessarily um, they've not given into their worst instincts, and they have actually overcome a handicap of sorts in their own aspects. I always look out for those because it just means that a person is able to listen to difficult feedback and also grow, because the ability to handle ambiguity and transform that into meaningful insights is really critical. I think the question on the type of leader I am
Yeah.
is oriented around, I generally try to focus on principled decision making as a foundation of any leadership, and I try to be a leader who can enable others to emerge as leaders in the organization as well. I will be honest, I'm a leader who often fails, and I fail quite publicly or at least with my team. I address these failures on a weekly basis. So we have a shared practice now where we make sure to articulate the top failures of each person, the impact those failures have had, and
Like
how we
across
are
the
going to
team.
move forward. Yeah, across the team, but also from a leadership standpoint. I think it's really critical, at least in the genesis and beginning and early days of the company, to have that level of honesty, because otherwise, the sense is that everyone thinks leaders are distant and aloof and have some sort of special power. No, the only special power we have is our ability to communicate honestly and to create a shared sense of meaning, right? So if there's no space for vulnerable discourse or an opportunity to really connect with someone else's humanity, why would I work for you? So it is an opportunity to be honest. I think that's sort of the principal decision making style I try very hard to create. Sometimes I fail, sometimes I succeed, but when I succeed, I really deeply enjoy every single moment.
And part of business is understanding what to scale and what not to scale. Is this something that you face too?
From a technology standpoint, the default is that every technology business wants to scale itself, right? So they want their APIs to be accessible. They want their software to be globally licensed in different languages. So that's always going to be there. I think the more challenging part is, should the culture of the organization scale, and how should that scale? Oftentimes, the cultural part to scale is probably the trickier part, right? So products are designed to scale from day one, at least for most technology companies. Unless you're a small and medium business owner and you run a shop in the corner, you don't necessarily need scale or that level of mad ambition, right, to conquer the world. But you may want to find opportunities to serve your community better. So it would be more about depth and providing direct service. So yeah, from a tech standpoint, all products are generally built to scale. Whether they scale depends on the infrastructure they're often built on. And now with Amazon Cloud and Google Cloud, it's not that difficult to build on scalable infrastructure using good microservices.
Right. In what year did you start Alitheas AI exactly?
I started it towards the end of last year.
Right. And what would you say your biggest challenge has been so far?
I think the primary area of intersecting, so there's several technologies that we have, right? So we have synthetic media technology, which is really an aspect which is democratizing CGI. And by that, I mean the ability to animate characters, to bring life to characters, to create machine-generated content. All of that they are remarkable advancements we've made in that domain that we've made investments in and that have returned on our investment. So that's been extremely, extremely valuable. The other piece of it, which is really the technology side of it, which is how do we provide opportunities for people to interact with this technology that would not harm the ecosystem. So if you look at enabling technology, so let's say what Photoshop did with images, right? That you could manipulate images, you could edit them, you could do. That was really transformative for photographers, graphic designers, created entire new industries, right? But at the same time, it had a deep impact on, let's say, if you take one industry, which is, let's say, the beauty and fashion industry, right? So like if you look at the plight of fashion models that appear on the front page of these glossy magazine covers, and the harm that sort of imagery that was always photoshopped or airbrushed, the harm that did to the imagination and the self-image of women across the world, but also creating perverse sort of incentives to continue that structure, right? So you'd always see clickbait sort of headlines. You'd see a lowest common denominator where everybody wants to look beautiful, where everybody wants to look airbrushed and photoshopped, as opposed to sort of real authentic humanity. So I think the issue is, like, every technology comes with its core ethical challenges. And I think us trying to take a thoughtful approach to that sometimes has slowed down our business, but also at the same time has enabled us to be really deliberate and conscious in the type of customers we want to bring on board, but also how we want to democratize and enable this technology. And increasingly, I think we're making a lot of progress there. So really, it's about creating the front end, the right interfaces to interact with powerful technology in a way that would allow people to play with it and build the right sort of incentives so that people can build really cool applications, as opposed to the lowest common denominator type applications.
Right. And seeing the current environment, I mean, COVID has really disrupted businesses like long established everywhere. So, how did that affect your business, the culture of your organization, your work from home strategy? Has that been a tough time?
Yeah, I think we were remote from day one, so it was pretty clear to us that this would be advantageous to the organization in terms of not needing to adjust to a remote first world, right? So we were a remote team from day one. We looked at the remote business model as an opportunity for us. And I think from a synthetic media standpoint, or at least AI generated characters and the way to build AI characters, actors and brands, specifically brands, let's say, they've wanted to film content or shoot content. Now, with movie studios being shut or studios being shut, it's become increasingly difficult for them to do so. So with our technology, oftentimes the ask has been from our enterprise customers and partners that, hey, we want to build this cool CGI-based character, or this cool character design. Can you bring that to life? And that's actually been a positive for us, just because of the industry we're in. And this was purely accidental. I think the downsides, and to be sensitive and mindful, have been to folks who have lost their jobs, and we're trying to find solutions where they can use our technology as well. And these are people who are actually extremely creative. So they may come from Hollywood, they may come from New York, they may come from all over the US, or from any part of the world, that we're in the arts, we're in acting, or we're in the media world, right? And their world has been fundamentally shaken up, because you can't have stage performances, you can't have theater, you can't have art, you can't have live performances anymore. And finding ways for them to interact with our technology has been a unique challenge, because you've had to shift that mindset as to how creators, or the creator economy as it's now sort of known, creator/passion economy, can use synthetic media technology to enable itself to express their ideas and express their art even better. So that's been a unique challenge and shift. And I think we're getting to a point where we have really understood their core needs, and we've been trying to express those core needs as clearly as possible through our product.
And so, for all the budding entrepreneurs out there, would you say that having a mentor to guide you through a startup journey is crucial? Is this some piece of advice that you give to them?
Yeah, sometimes mentors can be extremely valuable in terms of specific areas where you have, as an entrepreneur, as a founder, identified key areas of weakness. And I think that is the primary consideration that you should look at, as to which mentor can guide me in this specific area. I think knowing the specific discipline in which you can have good guidance is absolutely critical. But that is a sort of self evaluation and self judgment that the entrepreneur must make in him or herself. So the primary driver, once that is determined, is to find and seek the right mentors who can equip you with the right mental models and the right questions to ask, often with regards to the specific area you're struggling with. What sometimes I see is sort of a default to mentoring that is somewhat strange, when people say that they're not going to take the step unless they have extremely good mentors, or they sort of want to outsource a significant part of decision making to mentorship, and that sometimes is an excuse to prevent an action, right? So you must be careful about the mentor example or the mentor idea being used against you, versus you really leveraging that idea and moving your business forward. So I think mentors are critical, as long as you, as a person, know specifically the role they can play in the business.
Okay. And would you like to share your organization's 10-year plan with our audience? So where do you see the company going?
Yeah. So if you look at AI generated machine content today, so just very simply, Alethea enables people to create synthetic media, right? And so synthetic media is AI generated media that requires very little, um, human action, and the neural network can actually learn from previous actions that you've taken and create content at scale. And so this can be text-based content, this can be video-based content, and this can be audio-based content. So we've seen several different examples. The most recent one has been GPT-3, where text-based content that sounds somewhat intelligent can be scaled out. So people can write enormous amounts of text-based content through a machine, and they can just add a prompt in, one word or two words or a paragraph in, and the machine generates the entire text for you, and it sounds fairly coherent. So what that will do for science fiction writing or fiction writing or writing in general is going to be transformative, right? Where we come in at Alitheas, we really are in the avatar synthesis space, right? So we are trying to create this realistic characters that and realistic photorealistic characters that have art, that have expressiveness, that have life in them. And I think 10 years down from now, to be able to democratize that power for anybody to create unique characters that they own, not some corporation own or not some centralized player owns, right, and gatekeeps, to be able to give people the power to own their own avatar, to be able to participate in their own economy. That's something that I see happening. So one day, 10 years from now, actually, maybe even 5 years from now, you could create your own Hollywood style film just through the power of your laptop, right? So if you look at the way photos have evolved, or if you look at the way Instagram has evolved, or social networks have evolved, we never thought we'd have these powers. But I believe 5 to 10 years from now, you'd have transformative fundamental shifts in the way video content is created and movies are shared and told. So a normal user could potentially have the power and opportunity to create their own feature-length Hollywood film with their own characters, with their own expression and art. And I think really that's the vision, where AI-generated content can be really creativity multiplier to expressing and enabling the human spirit to tell its story more effectively, right? So that's really the vision, and I think that's the part where we want to really democratize and provide people the opportunity to access these tools at scale.
Right. So we're just coming to the end of the interview now. And for everyone listening to this, what kind of an offer can they get on Alitheas AI?
Yeah, so I think one thing that we're doing is, if you're a creator and if you're a content creator, or you have had experience in creating scalable content, there are two things that we're doing right now. One is we're hiring. So we have a couple of engineering roles that are open, and we're looking at onboarding the right technical talent so that we can really scale out this infrastructure. The second part is that if you're a creator and if you have had an opportunity to create content, and if you want to play around with this technology, we have several use cases and verticals that we really think this technology could be extremely suitable for. So we'd love for you to apply to our creator forum, and we are onboarding a pilot set of users in terms of creators who want to build synthetic content. So it's an exciting time to join our beta program and experiment with the technology for free. And we'd love to invite your audience to do that.
Okay, great. So thank you, Arif, for joining us on Better Tech. I hope you found the conversation to be a good one.
Yeah, it was exciting to learn and share, and also to share some insights that I hope your audience will find useful.